We're at the 4-minute mark, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to click us over and get started. I'm going to introduce Connie. You guys can see her beautiful face on our screen right now. She is the National Director of Medical Education for Lifetime, which is in many states operating across the country. So I know you've had challenges to see who can come back, when can they come back, and can estheticians come back. So you're going to tell us a little bit about that whole decision-making process. You also have an incredible company, Aesthetic Enhancements, that makes great tools and resources for the aesthetic provider, from anatomy tools to some new things you're going to talk about today. So we'll hear all about that. And then I met you as a trainer. You were training for Galderma. I know you train for Allergan a lot as well. You are at every conference injecting or talking or speaking or doing something all the time. So you're kind of coast to coast, as they say. And then for the past few years, you've done the course directing at iSpan, if I'm not mistaken, all the educational courses, and received a Founders Award. Was it last year?
Yes, that was really
Connie Brennan. Say that again?
It was the President's Awards with iSpan, which was really an honor. It was very humbling. And
you helped to build the original CANS exam. And I think it was you and Haley Wood. I think Jill Jones was in on that perhaps. So you're like the OG CANS people. And Hermine, I think, was in there as well. And you've published peer-reviewed articles. You've done lots with them. Of course, 30 years in aesthetics. So you are like the fairy godmother of nurse injecting. So we are so happy to have you today and cannot wait to get started.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love interacting with you, Tiffany. You're such a bundle of energy and you have such a light around you. So thank you for having me on your show.
Well, we are delighted to have you. So for all of you who are out there in the Instagram or in the YouTube world or here, shoot us your questions, let us know, and we're going to get Connie started. So Connie, you had your first day back yesterday. We want to know everything. Tell us all the details.
Well, so in Minnesota, at the 11th, the plastic surgeons can come back and do their elective procedures, and our clinics can. So we decided to kind of have just a day where we kind of spaced our clients out to see how that would go, make sure to give us 15 minutes extra in between each client visit, and to try to run through a day. So basically, I kind of saw half the amount of patients really in the day as a normal day. And we put all of our parameters in place, which everybody's been working on this last month, where you take their temperature when they arrive. We have a sign on our front door that says, you know, you're not allowed without a mask. And if you don't have your mask, call to reschedule. So they don't even enter without that. Temperatures taken, they're taken right to the room. The patient leaves before the other patient even gets to the practice because of that 15 minutes. And the most important thing that we remind them on the phone is to be on time for their appointment. If they're late, they might be canceled, because we are really running the ship on a kind of a tight time frame where we have extra time, but we need to make sure they're out before the next one's in. And the interesting thing is, once you get the patient in the room, is they want to take their mask off right away. They think that because now they're in a room with you, they want to take their mask off because it's time to talk. So we have to remind them, you know, keep your mask on until we're, you know, to the point where we need to do maybe that evaluation, then we need to take your mask off. Of course, we tell them, I will be masked. We're doing all the procedures of sanitization. But it's really interesting that automatically, it's almost like they think that it's a social place where they can just take their mask off now that they're behind closed doors, which I found that really fascinating. It was almost consistent, I would say, probably 80% of the patients automatically said, oh, can I take my mask off now? Because that was their way of kind of saying, oh, I feel weird in your presence because I have a mask on when I'm talking to you. So that was kind of interesting, I thought.
I was on a call, I did a call with Evelyn, a Corn Talk yesterday, and Keon Creamy said the same thing. He's like, we're putting in a no talk policy because the first thing that they do is take their mask off, like, whew, I'm glad that thing's off. Yes. Which is, again, a forceful talk. So, you know, the whole germ spreading, etc. And I saw a meme this morning that said, taking off your mask is like taking off your broth into the day. I mean, it kind of feels that way, like you're liberated. So I can see like a no talk policy being a really important thing.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's hard as a provider because you're so used to having that relationship with the patient where you just kind of sit down and have that talking, where you have to really be kind of that person that reinforces all the rules when you get in the room. And that's, I found it a little challenging myself to kind of be that person where to keep your mask on. We don't need to take that off right now, but it was very, very interesting. Yeah. And of course, oh, go ahead, Tiffany.
No, go. You're good.
Oh, you have patients that, you know, they've been waiting for 5 months. You know, they were supposed to come in early March and they maybe missed their appointment because something happened. Now they've been waiting 5 months. And so they're so anxious to get everything done and so excited that they want to tell you all the things that have happened in the last 5 months because you haven't connected. So totally, it's like, you know, getting back on the couch, your counselor space.
Well, and I've got some questions for you because you and I have a shared opinion on this. I'm not a medical professional, but I'm curious if you're doing filler and toxin and making that decision, since there's no real standard of care, how did you and your medical director go about deciding to do both, if you're doing both?
So I have 3 different medical directors and 3 different types of practices, and actually 4 different types of practices. And so I've spent about a month now on many, many webinars discussing this same topic with a lot of people. And I would say that there are opinions from one side to the complete opposite side. So I don't think there's a real right or wrong decision here. I think it's a very kind of interpersonal with your practice situation and how your medical director or how you yourself as a provider feel. As I bounced back and forth, at first I thought, you know, I'm going to come back to this practice and I'm just going to do neurotoxins so I can catch everybody up with at least that part of it, because I can keep their mask on, I can do their neurotoxins, I can get them out of the practice sooner. And it's not about monetary thing at all. It's like, how many patients can I get in with my buffer of time to get them caught up on that? And then we'll just have to catch up on fillers later. The problem I ran into bumping into all the patients that were texting me was that many of them needed their toxin, but were really adamant that when they returned that they needed, you know, XYZ done. Their marionette was looking bad, or they felt really looking crabby, and that the whole stress of the world for them made them feel very badly about who they were and how they looked. Jowls in particular were one thing that people said, I just think I developed jowls overnight. And you can only do so much with toxin with jowls. So, you know, I kind of warred within my brain, talking to my colleagues who I respect greatly about this. And at the end of the day, I've always been one that has been someone, and we all as providers keep our areas clean and sanitary. And so that hasn't changed in my practice, other than taking the extra time to take temperatures and put room between patients. That my sanitary procedures for my patients haven't changed. And so, but the extra measures are now in place. And so I kept thinking, with extra measures in place, with patients doing the right thing and me doing the right thing, now is probably the best time ever to get a little filler in, because they're, after coming from quarantine for 2 months, they're probably the cleanest they're ever going to be before they get this virus. And because we're all going to get the virus. I mean, I feel like, you know, I'd rather get inoculated right now and get it over with. That's my personal pragmatic approach. But our patients have been quarantined and they're desperate for looking better. And if I don't get filler in them now, it's maybe going to be a worse situation in September or October. Now, there is the argument, well, what if they get infected in September or October? And what if they get inflammatory responses, and then maybe their filler will get nodular because now we've got some cytokine kind of cascade, and they can maybe get some post-inflammatory nodules. And I would say that if that happens, we know how to treat them. We have a lot of information on what to do for them if this happens. I wouldn't anticipate it to happen a great deal if our approach is sterile as we can, as clean as we can. So that made me think, you know what, rather than my patients having to come to see me for Botox this month, and now they're desperate and want their filler next month, I have to touch them twice. So why not get what they need done in this window? And hopefully that rides them through the summer. And possibly then in the fall, when everything gets worse, I'm just having to do their toxin. And maybe they've been through their illness. So I would say there's not a right or wrong. This is just kind of my methodology. And in talking with my surgeons, they're very comfortable with that approach and inviting for me to get back in and kind of do my work. So that we're in agreement upon that. But I do know that I would say there's a weight and balance, and people are talking about it left and right. And there is no consensus yet. I think there will be, as I'm actually working on a board right now where we're developing kind of some consensus. And so I think more of this will come. In the meantime, we're charting waters that we've never been in before. So I think we'll know more in a few months. And that's where some of these choices may or may not be looked at as wise or not wise in the fall. And I think we have to kind of do what we feel is the best for our patients. And that's what I want to do for my patients. I don't really care about income. I just want to make sure my patients are getting what they need, when they need it, how they need it, with less touch points.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think to your point, coming off quarantines, maybe the best time to do it because hopefully they're healthier right now than they would be if they're exposed. So
Right.
I think,
Right.
and Steve Weiner sent me one of his devices, his new device with the plug, which by the way is actually quite comfortable and easy. So those of you who are looking for a way, if you want to do filler and you're a little bit nervous about it, his device is actually really, really awesome and very inexpensive too. So just an option. Now,
I
Connie, are
saw
you guys wearing gloves? I'm sorry, not gloves, but gowns? Are you wearing, like, what all kind of PPE are you wearing? And then we'll move on from COVID to more important things.
Yeah, so PPE, well, it's hard right now to get some PPE. So we have in our practice currently, where I was yesterday, we have masks. I'm wearing my glasses or goggles, depending, I have to wear glasses. I'm not wearing the shield because if I wear a shield, glasses, and a mask, I fog up so much that I can't see what I'm doing. So glasses, as long as I have eye covering and face covering, I feel pretty comfortable. I try to have my hair back so there's nothing here that can connect with the patient. I am wearing scrubs, and I've chosen scrubs that have the snaps down the front so I can take my scrub top off without having to lift it over my head. I'm not wearing a paper gown. I know some colleagues of mine are wearing paper gowns. I certainly would love to do that, but I cannot stand the heat that much, or I just can't work as much. I get so overheated. Already I'm turning the air conditioning up in my room quite a bit because with all this gear on, you get pretty hot all day. So I'm not wearing paper gowns, but I am wearing scrubs every day. I will come in scrubs, and then I take my scrubs off before I leave. I put them in a plastic bag. So then when I leave the office, I'm wearing regular clothes into my car and home. So I'm not bringing anything from the clinic home to my family. And then I have a washer right in my mudroom. It goes right in the washer when I get home, wash my hands, and my hair is up when I get home. And then of course I shower that, shortly after I get home, I'll shower just to make sure that anything that I might have with me hopefully is not. We leave our shoes at the door. We don't wear shoes in the house. We never have, but that's one thing I think is really important is, wander, traipse on. And then I'm wearing clogs. I have clogs that are washable. Their surface is clean, so you can wash them off. So I can scrub them down with, Cavi wipes or Lysol wipes or anything like that. And recently I've ordered a couple different things. I haven't gotten them yet, but I ordered one of those UV wands, and I thought I can UV wand my scrubs in between patients. Once I get that, and then that will help with the front of me, maybe get just kind of clean any more microbes. The most beautiful thing about scrubs is they do have the ability, there is a lot of kind of technology with scrub fabrics that there is some ability to kind of deal with some of the microbes. So they're made a little differently than regular clothing. So the microbes won't stick as much and interwove into the clothing. So that's helpful.
A lot of stuff to have to think about, remember, and do. No doubt this is a challenge. So my last question for you as we move on is, at the end of yesterday, how were you feeling? Was it exhausting? Did you feel exuberant and exhilarated? What was your mindset?
The day went incredibly fast because there's a lot of things to think about in between the patient. I felt so excited to be back and just, touching. I had a text at the end of the day, a patient saying, "Thank you so much for just being there all this time. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited for my results." Like, it felt good because I knew that I was making a difference where I haven't been able to do that for 2 months. And that has, there's a level of psychology when your job and your passion are interweave. And when that happens and you have to leave that, there's a sense of sadness. And so there's a sense of sadness. So being back in the office yesterday was a sense of joy. And I came home, my kids were like, "How'd it go, Mom?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, it was so good to be back in the office and just be there in the environment, knowing that I'm there to help." And I mean, I don't care if I made a penny during the day. It was just so fun to be there. I could care less about the money. It was just so much fun.
And the first day is always the hardest, right? It's like the first day of school.
Yeah.
Look, it's like Christmas Eve. You're waiting for Santa to come.
Yep. Well, one thing I found interesting about having the little window of time in between patients, and this is just going back to my days when you see patients back to back to back to back, and you're most worried about making sure the next patient isn't waiting because you respect their time, and you feel kind of badly if you're getting 10, 15, 20, now 30, now 45 minutes behind, is there was a sense of kind of peace in the day where I wasn't so worried about that next patient waiting because I knew there was no one waiting. I had time with this patient to at least take my time with the treatment, and I could clean in between. Once I cleaned, I could make a phone call if there was something that came through. I did my charting as I went. I didn't have stacks at the end of the day. there was a level of kind of peace in there that was very interesting that I haven't really had in a clinical day in, a very, very long time, years, I would say. So it was a very different sense of the day. I kind of liked it.
Maybe it really is our new normal.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so to that point, I know that you, much like me, are an SOP protocol junkie. I think everything needs a protocol. So I know you're managing this comeback for Lifetime and what's happening with all the clinics. Can you give us some advice on how you get providers past their apprehension or their fear to want to be, the big advocate in the clinic injecting, and also like how are you bringing back people thinking about hours and how on the schedule, and then how do you keep them from getting like complacent and just sort of saying, well, I know Connie, I'm not going to wear all this stuff when I have her in the room. She's fine. I know she's not sick. How are you kind of working through all that on the provider end of it?
Well, in our smaller clinics, I think the sense of that is that everybody's pretty responsible because we're pretty small. So in my 2 plastic surgeons office, is a small practice, and everyone seems very cognizant and also concerned that they don't want to contract COVID, nor would they want to pass it along. So I think in a smaller practice, it's a little easier to kind of keep an eye on things are going well. Everybody's doing what they need to do, and the spacing as well. The chairs are set up well. In larger practices, and I'm so grateful that I'm not running this single-handedly for our Lifetime practices. We have a director of the spa, Medi, we have a manager, and then we have a general manager, and then we have a whole ops team. So the ops team has ordered in all the masks and all the PPE equipment for Lifetimes, and we have many across the country, and they're opening them slowly. There's been a couple now that have been opened in different parts of the country that are open. Our Lifetime Club, we hope to open it on the 18th, which now will be a no-go because June 1st, our governor of Minnesota has pushed us to June 1. And so has the cosmetology board. So our estheticians, with Lifetime cannot come back to work until June 1. But our nurses, we have actually our legal team now talking to the governor, because I called the governor on Monday and the person that answered the phone, I said, tell me about if we're a Medispa, let's say our Lifetime clinic is a Medispa, and part of us is medical treatments, clinical treatments. Part of us is esthetician treatments. I understand our esthetician treatments cannot be done, but can our medical side of us open? And the person that answered the phone said, I don't know. I'll have to get back to you. So this was Monday and it's now Friday and he hasn't gotten back to us. But our legal team, I actually tasked our director. We had a conversation and I said, can you take our legal team to this to go ahead and figure this out? Because possibly our Medi side can open just that. But the gym itself, because we sit inside of a gym, the patients have to physically go through the front door of the gym to get to the Medi in our location. So that might close our doors till June 1. We're still working through the logistics of that. Now, on the flip side, we have a location in our Eden Prairie that has hormone replacement, and that has been running the whole time because hormone replacement, you can't just take people off hormone replacement because when their hormones go, the patient's psychology might go. So you can't do that. So we have a PA that's been doing hormone replacements out of necessity for the entire 2 months. And how we've done that is because it's essential. We have one door that enters the clinic and they come directly into the clinic, into a sanitization room. They put on their gloves, their masks, sign their consent, have their temperature taken. They're directed then to the treatment room. And in the process, the rooms are sanitized behind that patient after they've left and the door is shut. So they've been running that the whole time. So now we just have to integrate the two where we can now do our clinical practice and run it like that and figure out the flow. So we're still figuring that one out, but that's a bigger flow than our smaller clinics, which is another whole animal.
Yeah, I think once you start to add in 2, 3, 4 providers, you get bigger than that with all these different rooms.
Yep.
I've got folks saying they're going to put, yellow tape to go one way and red tape to go the other way, and there's a flow of traffic, and they've got the little dots on the floor that like Walmart has of 6 feet apart, and the chairs are all spaced out. So it's like a whole operations management exercise to your point. Yep. So I think the bigger guys have a little bit harder struggle to manage the flow than hopefully like some of the guys that have 2, 3, 4, providers. So
yep.
Let us know how that works out for you whenever Lifetime comes back with all your staff.
I will. One of the things I noticed this morning, so I went to my own physician's appointment this morning, my eye doctor's appointment, and I wanted to be a patient. And so I tried to book it this morning before I got online today because I'm like, how does it feel to be a patient versus the provider? And so I walked into the practice and the sign on their door says, you mask on, and the sanitizer was sitting by the door. Please sanitize when you come in. Then when you check in, all the plexiglass is up, and we have plexiglass in our plastic surgeon's clinic yesterday. The plexiglass is up, and they're handing you your form, and they had a dry erase consent where you dry erase on it. And I'm not sure if they're washing that off, so you don't have to handle paper. And then they had a hook on each door as you walked by it. And the door said, room cleansed, dirty, doors were all shut. So then you went to the room where it said clean, you went in, you didn't come out. And so they had multiple providers running. And that's kind of how I think they kept track of which room was had been cleaned and not. And I thought that hook on the door was an excellent idea when you're running multiple providers. I'm like, I'm going to take that back with me and see if we can't do that too, to make sure that we're not walking into a room that hasn't been cleansed, because you really have to have someone on full-time duty just cleaning rooms and wiping things down.
Yeah, we have like a no-touch toolkit with our EMR system, and we had some like little fun, like it's a green, yellow, red. You know, red's not clean, yellow it's in the process, and green you're ready to put someone in the chair. Because I think to your point, with a lot going on, it's going to be hard to know what's been clean, and it's going to smell like clean everywhere you go in the clinic now. So you're not going to really know. You can't walk in and be like, oh, it's just been freshly cleaned. So I think, yeah, it's a real struggle.
And, you know, my daughter said to me last night when I walked in, she says, she gave me a hug, of course, after I'd gotten all my stuff. She goes, Mom, you smell like the medical clinic. And I'm like, I'm sure I do more than ever, because I've had so much cleanser around me that I probably absorbed the fumes. And sometimes I wonder how healthy is that going to be for us as providers with all the chemicals. Like that went through my head last night. So I'm like, I feel kind of high on all the chemicals I have, you know, touching and smelling. And I'm like, I wonder how healthy that's going to be for us down the road. We haven't really talked much about that, but what's that going to look like in the future if this is our new norm?
But I think even take it outside the clinic. So the clinic needs to be obviously, you know, very, very clean. But think about the average person with all the sanitizer we're using. We're cleaning everything. There's basically no germs in our orb. What happens to our immune system long term? Because, you know, it's like little kids eat dirt because they get an immune system. We're not going to be eating dirt anymore. So, you know, I worry about long term our immunity in general, not just to COVID-19, but to all things. So, and as a mother of a small child, even more so, because he needs to be able to get a little yucky here and there because he's a little kid. So, you know.
We've been on a lot of calls. I think you have too, Tiffany, a lot of calls with even, you know, different physicians that work in the hospitals and such. And there is a concern about, I think, immunity and how not having exposure. I mean, our body is made of bacteria, a significant amount of bacteria. And if we don't kind of get immunity, our day-to-day stuff where we're maybe touching something dirty or playing in the dirt, like you said, as a kid, I am concerned about that too, for our own immunity. I'm not sure it's making us stronger. Obviously we don't want to transmit things, but do we need to be wiping everything with Lysol every minute of the day in our homes and things like that?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We have one quick question from Deborah about, are you guys using UV light to clean between patients?
So we have our UV lights on order. I have UV sterilizers in the room on order. I have the wands on order. And I also have the one where I can put the phone and my mask into, the little pod that you can put them into. I have all those on order. They haven't arrived yet, and everything's delayed. So I've had delay on my email orders. But yes, I would like to get those in all of the practices. And the one thing about the UV light in the room is that when you turn that on, there's a little remote. When you turn that on, you leave the room, because you can't be in the room when that's happening, is you have to have a wait time in between and re-entering the room once you turn that on. So I don't know how we're going to space that in certain rooms, and we're going to have to try to figure that out. But I thought the wand would be great for my scrubs, and then the pod would be great for my mask. And I could switch off masks during the day and put one in and take one out, kind of thing, so that I could make sure I'm wearing clean masks.
Well, we had on Mother's Day, I had Brandon Thompson on our IG Live. He has the VIO light, or VO light, which is like a 10-minute, to your point, 10-minute Philips bulb. It does all the, you know, the germ disinfecting, etc. And it's the same remote control. And the price point, I think, was $2,500. And it does like a room in 10 minutes. So I know there's some lower price point options. Also, Cartessa has a big one. It's like industrial grade with like 4 now. So if you guys want one.
Okay.
But the shipping time is a little longer than we'd like, obviously. I'm going to kind of migrate us over to some new topics, because we're all COVIDed to death.
Yes.
So at least I am, in the 8 weeks of webinars. I want to hear more about procedures, protocols, thinking about when this stuff's all over, you bring in new staff, your business is growing. how do you set expectations in your clinics? How do you teach people to do things, the right way, the consistent way? What all kinds of things do you have as far as, procedures and protocols in place today?
So I think the policies and procedures that we've had, we've kept those the same because we've really been doing things very similar to this. The new things that are added with COVID, we've kind of put in a separate document, like we're going to have the patient wearing their mask, and we're going to keep the mask on until the mask has to come off. And we've already had them swishing with mouthwash before any lip treatments. So there's certain things that we've had in place other than the new things, like they have to wear a mask in the office. And then what they're going to say on the phone pre-screening, that's a big one. So we have that on the front desk on a kind of a sign for the receptionist just to remember that these are the things you're going to ask them when you're doing their confirmation calls. You're going to also let them know all of these things. And then the thermometer is right at the front desk, and we take that, beaming it to the forehead, no touch. So those things are separate, written out kind of more on the COVID space. And then we have a separate COVID consent especially with Lifetime now, we've been going through this now for 2 months. We have a separate COVID consent that we have patients signing for that, just saying that they haven't been sick and that they don't have a cough and they haven't been caring for someone. So those are all kind of a separate COVID policy and procedure. Everything else that we've had in place is the same. The policy and procedures are the same. So it's more of that separate kind of document that had to be added to it.
Well, and when you think about what you already have in place, forgetting about COVID, what are the kinds of things for the average clinic that they need to have a defined policy for? I think people sometimes think about, I'm going on the fly. I think social media put that in this question here. How do you let them post social media pictures of their clients? Or how do you let them talk about the clinic? Do they reshare or can they post from their own account? So what are some of the things that people may not think about that need an SOP in place?
So I think policy and procedures, especially let's say for the types of procedures you do, you have to have a policy and procedure place regarding that exact procedure. So let's say neuromodulators. There's a policy about how you're going to do that in our practice. So you're going to use, XYZ, depending on your medical director, of course, if he has an order for you to treat that, how it is, how you're going to reconstitute it in your practice. Also how to handle adverse events associated with that particular treatment, i.e. dermal fillers. You have a dermal filler consent, how it's going to be done in our practice. And then associated with that is going to be, how do you handle adverse events? Is this adverse event a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3? And at a level 2, the practitioner can handle it. At a level 3, the medical director needs to be contacted. The medical director needs to be involved, XYZ. So you have to have kind of levels of these adverse events and how you're going to handle them. Once you have your level set, then you're going to make the policy about the adverse events and how that's going to be handled, whether the physician or practitioner would like to treat a post-inflammatory nodule with, what are you going to do, steroids, or is it going to be antibiotics? And you're probably not going to put the policies and procedures too strict, because you need some wiggle room in there for that provider, because you're going to have multiple providers that maybe treat things just a little differently, which is very common in our industry. Not everybody is a ABC, maybe they're XYZ, and they like to treat a certain way. So you have to allow wiggle room in your policies and procedures to a certain percentage, so that should you be taken to court, that you don't have anything so specific that they can fault you on your specificity. So for sure, leave wiggle room in there, but you'll have kind of your general policy and procedures in place. And then on top of that, it's kind of like running a code. If you're in a hospital, like how are you going to run a code? Like if you have, let's say, a vascular occlusion, and yes, you'll have your adverse event policy and procedure, which allows your wiggle room, but you're going to run your code and you're going to practice. If I do get an adverse event of this, how am I going to handle it in my practice on a day-to-day level? And who do I need to get involved? And then as far as standardized policies and procedures on photographs, which you were just talking about, social media, is you have to make sure that any social media photos that are shared, that you have a specific consent that states on there exactly what it's going to be used for. So maybe like in our policy for photographs, we have a photography consent, and in that consent it says, I will allow my pictures to be used for social media, educational, blah, and the patient can cross out the things that they don't want it to be used for. But then again, before we actually use the pictures, we verbally talk to the patient again. And more often than not, I have them re-sign a consent, because I know how often that these things can get misconstrued with the date on them. So I'll have them re-sign that day when we're talking about, we're having a Lifetime Summit, we'd like to use your photos today because your results, we'd like to post them. Are you okay with it? And then we have them sign the consent right before the summit, before everything's done. So we have kind of policies in place about that, kind of more strict than anything else is that.
You know, one of the things that dealing with a lot of clinics, obviously with the AR, we have a few thousand clinics who are on our system. And we hear a lot about an individual provider sharing photos of a patient result. They don't tag the practice in it. It's not shared from the practice's account. And my concern is on that consent the patient signs, it's signed with the practice. It's not signed with Connie Brennan's individual Instagram. So my fear is on your consent as a practice owner or manager, making sure that providers know what they're sharing and what the rules are, because the patient is thinking about, to your point, Lifetime sharing it, not the individual provider on their personal social network. So those are the kind of like policies and things I think about a lot as a person who might be sued, to your point, legally. How do you defend that? I don't know if it's not specifically or expressly put in that consent that our individuals might be sharing it too. So yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or what you've seen people kind of go through or coach through on any of that.
I think there's a lot of room in there for improvement, because I do see many providers that, take their photos of their patients within their practices and they're not the practice owner, or maybe they are. And then they share those befores and afters on their personal Instagram, which is not, let's say, the Lifetime Instagram. We have kind of, within Lifetime, we have an agreement with our company as providers that when we have many times training sessions, that's a part of our training session, and we encourage them to share. And we actually have that because we want our providers to have photos so that they can share their work and their art. So that's a big discussion that we have with our, not only patients that are being treated there in particular training sessions alone, and then our providers and then our company, so that we have kind of a mutual understanding. But I do think that there's some room for improvement in there, no matter what clinic we work in, because it happens consistently. And I'm sure you see it all the time, and I see it all the time too.
Yep, like just tell them whether you believe to do it or not. It doesn't matter as long as the consent tells you can do it. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think right now it's become a big thing in COVID because we're all trying to find content to post. So I'm seeing it the last few weeks much more than I normally would, because people just need content. So
yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of posting befores and afters. If you look at my site, you'll see that's probably a very small percentage. And I know some people have great befores and afters, but I think that they can be so deceiving, and lighting can just really change everything. My background is photography, and I just a tweak of light or a little different shadow somewhere can make them so deceiving that I feel like sometimes it just doesn't make sense to, I don't know. That's just my own sense of it, but it's fun to see them. And I know patients love to see befores and afters. I mean, it's one of their favorite things to see.
Well, that leads like you have to have a photo booth and specific places to sit and tape on the door and the right lighting. We could go on that discussion for days and days.
Yep.
You mentioned adverse events. I popped this on the screen about when you think about adverse events, having things on site. So when I was part of the training world, I got asked every day, what should you have in your clinic in case of an adverse event? Walk us through what the Connie Brennan crash cart looks like.
So the Connie Brennan crash cart so I have everything possible. So we have about, when you're thinking of, depending on your adverse event, and the biggest one that we fear, of course, in aesthetics is with dermal fillers. And I do think that, blindness is probably the biggest one that we fear, but the more realistic one that we face is an embolism of some sort or a vascular occlusion. So that crash cart looks like hyaluronidase, and a lot of it. We carry about 12 boxes almost all the time in all the clinics. At Lifetime, we carry even more than that so that we can share amongst our locations if we need to have more of them. I have used up to 21 vials in a vascular occlusion over the course of a weekend, helping another provider. It wasn't my patient, but I was helping her with, and we were scrambling to find that many vials over the weekend amongst clinics in town. So we drove all over to find vials and borrow them from providers. So I would say that the more you can carry, the better. I do believe that people are nervous about them expiring because they're not inexpensive. So at the cost of between $60 and $90 a vial, and having a multitude of them, if they expire, people feel like that's really a big expense, which it is. Most of the Hylenex in particular has at least a year expiration date on it most of the time. So I say, if you haven't used all that in a year, count your blessings, and it's the best insurance you could ever have. That, you know, it's Murphy's Law. If you don't have it, something will happen. If you have it, it's like the good luck, you know, fairy. But so we carry 12 vials at a time and sometimes more. Most importantly is that you have everything you need to create the best experience for your patient. So you have your Hylenex, of course you have your syringes, your lidocaine, your needles, and then of course talk therapy for your patients as you're kind of walking through this and helping understand it. On the front side of that, the best toolbox you have is patient education before you even start. And if you educate them that this is a possibility, and if I see any blanching, if I see any trouble, I'm going to be getting my enzyme right here in the refrigerator in the room, and we're going to just go ahead and flood the area with it to break up the product. That education is probably the top of mind in the toolbox, and then all those items to have in place. And then if you're worried about the blindness crash cart, you're going to have, you know, something that they can read. You're going to have something they can cover their eye with to check perception. You'll have your pen light flashlight just to see if your pupil can dilate or not. You'll again have Hylenex if you choose to do a retrobulbar, or you're going to have the name of an ophthalmologist right then and there that you've collaborated with that you can call. So there's some things in the toolbox that are important. And I think running through it in your head as if it's happening, and actually reviewing it in the clinic with your people, like if this happens, what's our response going to be? Pretend like it's happening and run that code over and over. I've run through it with many of my providers. We've actually gone through it together. I've gotten pictures by text of this area from providers. What do I do now? Look what I see, you know, and I'll even send a picture of, you know, this with this circled with here's where you put your needle here. So some people just don't know how to treat it if it happens. And with my, of course, my medical directors, with, you know, blessings, these things can happen. And really you can avoid so many problems if you are ready. And the patient's skin is saved, you're saving skin. So you want to run through it over and over.
Yeah, so you guys, if you didn't catch that, she doesn't have one vial, she has 12 vials. One vial is not going to do the trick for you. You're going to need a lot more than that. So I think that's often a misconception. I know you see that when you train all across the country. And some folks have no vials on site, which makes me a little bit nervous. So
it's kind of shocking. And I know that people, like I even had a plastic surgeon from another state call and say, well, you know, I have one vial, but I think I have problems. What do you want to do? How can you help me? And she honestly had never been told that she should carry more than one vial. And so wherever her training had come from, I don't know, but I think if whoever's listening, that's probably one of the best words of wisdom is just have more than one, have as many as you can afford to carry. And if you can't afford to carry more than a box, which is 4, you know, make friends with your neighboring clinics and just know that you have a cell phone that you can call at 5 o'clock on a Friday, because it's always when these things happen, that you can get a hold of theirs and then you can return them to that provider. The problem with that is that if you borrow your neighbor's Hylenex and they have a problem on Monday and you've had a problem on Friday, now none of you have product, because it takes a good 48 to 72 hours sometimes to get in the clinic when you order it. So with that being said, if everybody's responsible enough to carry their 12, then if 2 people have a problem, at least there should be somebody that can help out too.
Agree. Do your part. So
Yep.
we are at time of where I want you to start sharing some of your screen. I'm going to stop my share. We're going to look at, she's launching a brand new product, which is super exciting, plus lots of other things that she has in her toolkit with aesthetic enhancements that she's going to share with us. I'm going to stop my share and let you start. And as you do that, we had a question about the no talk policy I mentioned. So this is from Keon Creamy yesterday in an Evelys talk. He mentioned that in his clinic, once the mask comes off, they can't talk. There's no more talking until the mask comes back on from the patient perspective, because he said that they inevitably take it off and they're like, whoa, glad that thing's off. And they start talking immediately like a chatterbox. So it's like there's little signs, no talking. So that's what the no talk policy was for the person who asked. But I'm going to turn it over to you to share your screen.
Okay, and the other thing too, Tiffany, when you say that is, so yesterday this happened to me, and this happens somewhat routinely in aesthetics, is that when you're putting any type of neuromodulator in that corrugator, supercilli, and procerus, is that you can elicit that sneeze because you have that neurovascular bundle, right? So making sure that when you're doing toxin, that mask, it has a tight fit. Because of course, yesterday when I'm doing neurotoxin here, the patient says, I'm going to sneeze. And I'm like, and I pushed her mask even closer to her nose just because I was like, I just didn't want any upward flare of that sneeze, but it's really important.
I'm a sneezer, so I get it 100%.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you want me to share my screen?
I do.
And you want me to talk about kind of what I just developed recently for kind of a patient safety and protection for us as providers. So,
1000%.
Okay, I'm going to share this. So recently, and this isn't recently, but within the last 10 years, I have developed in my mind, actually it's been 20 years, a tray. And if any of you remember years and years ago, the collagen product, and when it came to the clinic, it came in small little tiny plastic trays and the syringes lined up in each of their grooves. And I would save those trays because they were helpful for me to line up my little toxin syringes with my little vial sitting in the corner. But then when I would mix all my things and put it in the fridge, the vial would fall over and it just became frustrating, but it was the only tool I had to kind of organize my syringes and make them look nice and neat on my tray. So 5 years ago, I decided to contact a bioengineer who has patents behind him as well. And I asked him to CAD draw the drawing that I had on paper. And so we drew this drawing and we made a 3D model of it. And I started to use this tray in my clinic. And I didn't like some of it, so I changed the drawings a little bit. And then I developed another 3D model with his help. And we used it again. And I didn't like things, and then I changed it again. And I asked 3 of my providers to use it in the clinic with me to give me their feedback. And so as feedback came in, I changed it again. And so as of January, the drawings were done. The patent was submitted a year and a half ago. And as of June, the design patent should be here. In the meantime, I have 500 of these trays in my home, and the packaging has been done. And I'm super excited about it to help with our patients. The goal was originally to design it around the neuromodulators because we have 4 different ones on the market, and we have 4 different vial sizes, 2 different vial sizes really, but different vial sizes. And then sometimes people are using 2 different types of neuromodulators in a single patient treatment. So how do we keep all of that together? How do we make sure we have the right ones and our models and all that? So the tray has been done. I have them here, but I'm going to show you a little video of them and just kind of share with you what I've been working on. And I wanted to bring this to market and hope that I could keep the cost conscious so that it would be available for all of us for patient safety. So I'm going to give you, it looks like it didn't behave itself. So I'm going to go back to my desktop. Let's see. Sorry. You get my whole screen here because I didn't do it right. So let's see.
There we go. We see it now.
Do you see it? Okay.
The Connie tray was originally designed to accommodate our neurotoxins that are on our market. And some people like to call neurotoxins neuromodulators, so it can be designed for any of our neuromodulators actually fit in this tray. You'll notice I have some different size vials here. I have a Dysport vial, I have a Jeuveau, a Botox, a small 50-unit Botox vial, and a Xeomin vial I don't have in this photo, but it fits in the same as the smaller. So it's designed to accommodate all of our neurotoxin vials to date. It is also used to accommodate the syringes that we might use in our neurotoxin delivery. So this, just so you can see, is a longer syringe that is used for mixing. Some like to use this type of syringe for injecting. These are also some syringes that are used for injecting. Now the question is what type of toxin you use and how you might use this tray for your patients in your practice. The supplies you can fit into the side journey here. You can really use this any way you want. But if you decide that you're someone that likes to use 2 or 3 different toxins in your practice, you then might choose to have your toxins here and your syringes that are used to fill with these toxins in each of their lanes. So you can use this for a multiple toxin tray. You can use it for a single patient tray, which means you might get your vials mixed in the morning and put your syringes in here per patient, and then put the lid on it, put the patient safety band on it, and have this tray prepared for just one patient, which would be for patient safety. Other clinics might decide to use this for a multiple vial preparation tray, in which they might put their vial of Botox in here, or maybe 2 or 3 different vials of Botox, and then go ahead and fill up the lanes with syringes of different unit dosages. So you can use this in multiple ways. The supplies fit in through here. If you decide that you want your saline to go with you when you put your lid on, you would just need to lay the saline down on its side so that when you put your lid on your tray, you'll be able to take this from room to room. But that was the origination of this, is to use it for neurotoxins, but it does fit a lot of our other vials for different injectable products.
So the nice thing about that is I also have many videos. They'll be on my website shortly. Actually, I just talked with my website guy this morning, and I said, can you at least get the tutorials up and some of the photos up so people can see the dimensions fit into a very small clinical refrigerator. It is only a 9.5 by about 11.5 size, almost a little bigger than a piece of paper in its dimensions. It's about 2 inches high total with the lid on it. And the patient safety band is available so that you can write the provider, how it's reconstituted, if you're doing it for a specific patient or if it's more of a storage. So there's a lot of different ways. Sculptra fits in those bigger ones. It's idealized for Sculptra, so you can prepare that. And I do have a little Sculptra video if you'd like to see it. It fits a longer syringe, 3 cc with a cannula on it. They can lay right in the lanes. So it's really wonderful. Kybella, the smaller holes fit Kybella. So I will have pictures of all the products in different ways on the website, where you can kind of see like, hey, that's a product I use all the time. How would it fit with that? And I actually have Sculptra that I just mixed in my cabinet right now with, it's in my little thing. It's all not drawn up, because Sculptra, I like to let it, get hydrated and then I'll draw it up later. But then in the morning, I'll get it ready for the patient. And the lidocaine can go right on the little side tracks. There's a lot of ways you can use it. The beauty of it is it's fairly indestructible. It is made of a medical grade plastic that is something where I've thrown it against tile. I've thrown it against a tree. The only way that I broke it was I had my son-in-law to be, who's a MMA fighter. He whipped it at my driveway and cracked it, and then he whipped it again and he finally broke it. But he's got like muscle power of like, nobody I know. So that's the only way it broke. And then it is a product that you can throw in your dishwasher. Like I have usually 2 or 3 of them going at a time. And how I did it yesterday, just because I wanted to kind of get my patient flow down, is I mixed my 5 vials of toxins that I use. I had them in the side tray and I had the cover on. So I can wipe that cover down with Sidex, but all my toxins are loaded for the day. And then I had pre-looked at all my patients, like that patient needs 25 units of that, 30 units of that, 50 units of that. So I had them all in their lanes, and then my Mayo stand is set up and I had another tray there. So I would look at the patient's chart, I would pull over what that patient needed, put it in that tray, that's the patient's tray, and then I had a side tray that's all loaded with the different products I needed for the day. Therefore, I had less touching of my vials, less touching of products, and I could wipe down the cover, which is covering everything. The product is made so that you can wipe it with Sidex, you can spray it down with any medical grade cleaner, Lysol, whatever you want, but it also can go in the autoclave. It can be autoclaved multiple times. So if you want to throw it in there just to get everything off it or UV light it, whatever you want to do, it is autoclavable up to 250 degrees multiple times during the day. So I'll have, whip a couple in there if you want to while you're, working with some. So that's just some things you can do. And I think it's an awesome product. Selfishly, I wanted to do the investment really just for myself, but I just wanted to share it. So if nobody purchases it, I'm okay with it because I have lots of trays I can use over the years.
What's your price point for these wonderful trays?
Well, so the price point on a single one is $225. And then there's going to be packs of 2, packs of 5, packs of 10, and packs of 20. Because some of the larger clinics, they're going to need more. By the time you get to 20, the price point comes down to about $140 a tray. And then I asked my website person this morning if I could give AR a discount, just with a code, if anybody wants to go online and take a look at them. And he was going to try to put in the code of AR 2020 for $20 off. So AR now has their own code of 2020 if anybody wants to get that $20 off their first order.
We'll post that everywhere for sure. And I'm thinking about this, Connie, from like the COVID perspective of what you just said. I can mix all in the morning, and I'm not walking back and forth to the fridge, taking this patient's germs to this fridge. We're all together getting different things out, bringing it all back. Like, I feel like all these tools that we've talked about in the last 8 weeks are not only about efficiency, which I think is critical, as you mentioned, time is of the essence, but also the spread of disease and infection. You're keeping it very self-contained, which I think is, as a patient, I'd be very happy about that. So
yeah,
kudos to you.
Thank you. And they do fit on a Mayo stand. One fits on a Mayo stand, so I made sure it would fit within the boundaries of that little Mayo stand rim. And then in those small little refrigerators, they fit in there, and you can usually stack 2 or 3 depending on your shelving in there. So, and of course, if you have a larger refrigerator, and then if you have a dishwasher, like I'll run 10 of them at a time in a dishwasher. I know they're sanitized anyway, and then I can spray them down with Sidex, let them dry, and then we can load them up. So they're very efficient and durable. And I just hope that people love them, because to me, it just has made my life a little bit neater and cleaner and simpler.
And the website, is it ConnieBrennan.com? Did I dream that?
It's actually ConnieTray.com. It has its own website. So
it has its own website. I love it.
It's its own little being. So it's ConnieTray.com.
I love the name Connie Tray, by the way. It's super cute. Before we jump off with you, I want to just quickly go through some other tools that you have. You got those beautiful anatomy posters that, is his name Kevin Spees? Is that his last name?
So Kevin Cease and I have worked together since 2012. As a matter of fact, Kevin's such a great guy. He had no idea he was a great facial artist that I was connected to by a woman that I work with, who's a wonderful friend. And I said, I'm looking to do these anatomy, drawings, and I really want to do some education. Do you know of anybody? And I was always asking people, like, do you know anybody? She goes, well, he doesn't really know anatomy, but he certainly knows facial like art. And I said, well, let's hook up. So we connected by phone. I started teaching him about anatomy. I told him what I wanted. I told him how I wanted it. He was studying anatomy. I was, teaching him things. We would change things. And so over the course of about a year, we developed the first anatomical drawing that he had ever done. And I posted that in an article because I did an article back in 2013 or 14, I think, called The Danger Zones of Dermal Fillers and the Danger Zones of Neuromodulators. And I posted this first anatomy drawing that he and I had done together. That then got put on his Pinterest without my copyright, and it went kind of viral, and I had to go chase people with lawyers and things, websites, and because I'm like, you guys have to at least put my copyright on it, because I own the copyright on it, because I paid him to do this. And we, and he was so kind. He was, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't know. Like, he's just this really wonderful guy. In the meantime, he's become a very famous anatomy artist.
He has. Over
the course of the years, which has been great. In the meantime, him and I have done some other drawings, and we then produced STAR back in 2018. And STAR is a simple tool for anatomy relevance, where I took half of the face and I made it for neurotoxins, and then half of the face for dermal fillers as far as safety goes for muscles and vessels. And I ran this before I published it, I ran it by Jonathan Sykes. I ran it by some other anatomists, just saying, I need to make sure, because I'm not an anatomist, but I'm looking to design a tool for us as injectors for safety and also for patient teaching. So I had those posters coded so you can have them in conference centers and you can teach with them. And the hard part about posters is they're a little more challenging to do in the chair with patients, because the patients are far away from the wall. So I have a new tool that will be coming in the next month. It's almost here, which is a flip chart. And the flip chart has its own little easel, and it's about a 10 by 13 flip chart that you can use in the chair with your patients. It will be coated, so it will be more antibacterial, that you can wash it down. It will be all dry erase capacity, so you can draw, and the very back page will be a treatment plan page for neurotoxins that you can actually draw for your patient on it, put the units on the bottom and the dosing, and they can take a picture of it so they don't have to take paper home with them. And then there's going to be the first anatomical drawing that Kevin and I ever did will be on there, because people have asked and asked and asked for it. So that will be one of the flip charts, and then there will be about, I think, 12 images. And so the posters, a single image, sell for a little over 100, but the entire piece will sell for like $2 something. So it's going to be a phenomenal flip chart. I'm so excited about it. It has taken months and months and months, but we've been powering through it. And I'm super excited about that to come too.
I think there's all these great anatomy things happening in the industry. A few you and I worked on together, many moons ago. But to your point, to keep them in the clinic where a patient can look at it and can, in a sense, tactile feel it, maybe not actually, but in a sense, I think that's such a big part of the education. To your point about patients, even with adverse events, like you're going to bruise, and by the way, here's why. And let's look at all the vascularity in your face. So I think the ability to have, and also providers who are new and learning, going back and referencing something right before an injection is, you can't buy that. That's such a great tool for anyone involved. So I love your anatomy posters. I think they're on our marketplace for Aesthetic Record. And the Connie tray is phenomenal. So connietray.com. I'll put the discount code on our Instagram, so we'll have that out for AR users. And get your Connie trays, people, because this is a great reduction of germs, but also increase in efficiency mechanism for your practice. We are right at time. The hour flew by. Like, I don't know where the hour went, but it's gone. So a few of you asked how to version that you'll be able to see before the end of the day. So you'll get a really nice version of that, and then you can reference them there. It'll be on our Instagram page, the little link as well. So you can catch all the beginning of Connie's talk by the end of the day. So Connie, any last words from you or thoughts before we have to hop off with you?
Well, I saw a question from Sue. It says clarifying your no-talk policy. Your no-talk policy, did you already clarify that earlier with Karimi? Okay.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about what he had talked about. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. I just want to make sure we got that.
And Dolly, yes, webinar available after this on YouTube. It'll take our media team a bit to get it all done and put together, but it'll be up there before the end of the day, because you can have Connie forever. You can watch her anytime you want.
Thank you, Tiffany. It was so great being with you. I love you so much, and I hope that you're safe.
I miss you.
I miss you too. Let's do this again soon.
Let's do it. Thanks all for watching. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.